So every morning I eat a pretty similar breakfast with 2 eggs, milk, water, fruits, usually being strawberries, and a peanut butter sandwich. And this meal does come with a lot of nutritional benefits. However, there are also a few setbacks, which I am going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about the 2 large eggs. So the statistics that I found online only refer to 1 large egg, so you can double the statistics to find an accurate measure of the nutritional values. So I first want to start out with the amount of calories 1 large egg has, which is about 91 calories. 7 grams is the amount of total fat, which is 10% of the daily value. 2 grams are saturated fat, and around 4 grams are unsaturated fat. So there is a lot of unsaturated fat, however, the presence of saturated fat doesn't make this the healthiest option. Another large setback about eggs is the 169 milligrams of cholesterol, which is 56% of your recommended daily intake for cholesterol. So because I have 2 large eggs, I am already exceeding the daily amount of cholesterol every single day, just starting in the morning because of the 2 large eggs. The sodium is 88 milligrams, which is 3%. Potassium, about 81 milligrams, 2%. So these numbers aren't really as significant as the cholesterol. The total carbohydrate is only 1 gram, so it doesn't even make up a single percent of the recommended daily intake for all the calories. There is a large amount of protein though. There is 6 grams of protein, which is 12% of the recommended daily intake, which is very significant. So having 2 eggs would give me 24%, which is quite healthy, especially for the breakfast. The large outstanding numbers for the or for the vitamins are vitamin A and vitamin D, with 7% of vitamin A and 11% of vitamin D. So eggs are a pretty healthy breakfast. However, the main setback that they have is the large amount of cholesterol. The next thing that I'm going to be talking about is the peanut butter that I mentioned in the peanut butter sandwich. And this is just dedicated to the peanut butter, not the bread, which is going to be mentioned later. So the peanut butter amount per serving is 2 tablespoons, and the amount of calories is 188. So this is very accurate to what I eat every morning because I do consume about 2 tablespoons of peanut butter every morning. The total fat is 16 grams, which is 24% of the daily value. And saturated fats being about 3.3 grams, 16% of the daily value, and the unsaturated fat being about 12.4 grams. So there is a lot of unsaturated fat, which is very healthy. However, there is also quite a lot of saturated fat. Even though it's just 3 grams, it already makes up 16% of the daily value. Now, an upside to this is the cholesterol, which actually peanut butter has 0 milligrams of, and sodium only 5 milligrams, which doesn't make even a single percent of the daily value. There is 208 milligrams of potassium, which is 5% of the daily value, which is also quite healthy. The total carbohydrates is 6 grams, which is a great way to start off my morning, being only 2% of the daily value. The dietary fiber is actually very surprising for me because I didn't find this in eggs, is 1.9 grams, 7% of the daily value. So like we learned in health class, fiber actually makes you feel full and cleans out your intestines at the same time. So it's very beneficial in keeping a pretty balanced weight. Sugar is about 3 grams, with protein being 8 grams, which is also pretty healthy. I think it's very healthy because it's a great way to start out your day having a good amount of protein and carbohydrates, as well as unsaturated fats. The only numbers that stand out for the nutrition and the vitamins is vitamin B6 and magnesium. So vitamin B6 has about 10% of the recommended daily intake, and magnesium about 12%. So overall, I thought personally that the peanut butter was pretty healthy, but when consumed to excessive amounts would be quite unhealthy due to the amount of saturated fats that was in this. So I'm now going to be talking about the whole wheat bread, which just finishes off the peanut butter sandwich that I mentioned. So whole wheat bread itself is a pretty healthy option of bread. The serving size is 1 thin slice or 33 grams, which is very similar to what I eat, about 1 slice. And the calories is about 92 calories. The total fat is 2 grams and the carbohydrates being 17 grams. The protein is 3 grams and the fiber being 2 grams. And like peanut butter, the fiber is very beneficial because it cleans out your system and it also makes you feel full. The largest numbers that stood out to me was selenium and manganese, because the manganese was about 31% of the recommended daily intake and the selenium being about 18% of the recommended daily intake. So overall, these numbers do prove that whole wheat bread is pretty healthy. Of course, like anything else, too much of this would be quite unhealthy. But I feel like even like a lot of whole wheat bread would not be as unhealthy as a lot of peanut butter, like was previously mentioned. And overall, I think the peanut butter itself is, or peanut butter sandwich itself, is a pretty good option. Like many other students, I start out my day drinking quite a lot of milk. The amount per serving is 1 cup or 244 grams. I drink about 1.5 cups to about 2 cups every morning of milk. The amount of calories per cup is 103 calories, with 2.4 grams of total fat, or 3% of the daily intake, and about saturated fat being 1.5 grams, or 7%. The unfortunate thing is there is not much unsaturated fat. So there is not even 1 gram of unsaturated fat, which at first glance would be pretty unhealthy. However, milk does have a lot of other promising nutritional values. So the sugar is about 13 grams and protein about 8 grams, 16% of the daily value. So it's a great way to get or to wake up. Sodium is about 107 milligrams, while potassium is about 366 milligrams, or 12% or 10% of the daily value. The total carbohydrates are about 12 grams, or 4% of the daily value. The most beneficial part of milk, like all people know, is the amount of calcium in milk, which is about 30% and is very essential to developing very strong bones. Every morning, I make sure to get a large amount of strawberries, about 5 to 10 large strawberries. The amount per serving is 1 cup, or 144 grams, which is about 5 to 10 large strawberries. So the statistics accurately represent the amount of fruits that I eat every morning. The calories are 47, and the total fat is 0.4 grams, which is not even a single percent of the recommended daily intake. The unsaturated fats add up to about 0.3 to 0.4 grams. So you are still getting pretty healthy fats, but just very small amount of it, and luckily no saturated fats. Looking at those statistics alone, I can already tell that strawberry is not really much of a nutritionally filling food. However, you do feel very full because there is almost 3 grams of dietary fiber, or 11% of the daily intake. There is 11 grams of carbohydrates, 3% of the daily intake, with 220 milligrams of potassium, 6% of the daily intake. There's only 1 milligram of sodium, so it doesn't even make up a single percent of the daily intake. The largest number that stands out here is vitamin C, with 141% of the recommended daily value. This is very important because we learned in health class that getting the right amount of vitamins is very important, but going over it is not that harmful. So overall, I think strawberries are a very, very beneficial food choice, especially among the other food choices that we've seen today. I learned that through this project, the most harmful thing that I'm getting is cholesterol from the eggs, because I'm getting over the 100% recommended daily intake just by eating the 2 large eggs during breakfast, which is pretty unhealthy. So I'm going to try to cut down on just having maybe 1 medium egg, not even a large egg, because the amount of cholesterol that's in the egg. But I also learned that with all the items in there, I have quite a bit of fiber, over 7 grams, which I learned in health class cleans out your system as well as makes you feel full, so it keeps your weight pretty balanced and pretty healthy. There was 613 calories, not grams, in this meal, 7.8 grams of saturated fat and 18.8 grams of unsaturated fat, which was also very surprising for me because I know that saturated fat is pretty unhealthy, and there is quite a lot of unsaturated fat. Because I don't exercise that much, I realized that that would be unhealthy because I can't use all the energy as well. But I also learned that this is a meal that I shouldn't eat too often, and if I was to, I'd have to cut down a lot on peanut butter and the amount of eggs that I eat because there was so much saturated fat that came from those two things. This meal is very significant in the source of calcium, especially because that comes from the milk, and vitamin C, which comes over 144% of the recommended daily intake from the strawberries.